I'm Erica Wassinger with the Startup Collaborative. The interesting thing about ideas is that they actually really root almost in problems more so than in innovation. So if you think about some of the greatest companies in the world, they start by saying, I think that something's wrong and I think that it could be done better. So if you kind of ladder back to the earliest days of companies like LinkedIn. LinkedIn was created to help professionals better connect and showcase their resume. Well, now it does so much more than that. It helps you find jobs, it helps you build networks, it helps you communicate with other professionals in like industries. But it all started with this problem that it was difficult to showcase your resume and it was difficult to connect with other professionals. So I actually really believe that great ideas are actually born of painful problems. As you grow and develop as an entrepreneur, you need to really lean into a couple key people that will help you build not only your business, but build you as a professional. And I think the distinction there is really important. So on one side, building your business, the most important person or people that help you build your business are always going to be your customers. So being very eyes wide open and ears open to what they're saying they need, what they want from you, what they like about you, what they don't want from you, but then also listening and watching for their cues of what they're not buying from you, what they're not using on your product or platform are really important. So think of your customers as possibly the most important mentor in the business you build. And then there's a second subset of really important people. And these are sort of your personal advisors as you go through this journey. It might be co-founders. Starting up is very much a team sport. So figure out who is complementary to you. And then who can help you sort of chart a path that they've been down before that looks similar to where you're going. What can you learn from their mistakes? What can you learn from their successes? And how do you ask really important questions of those people that yield insights to you that wouldn't have been asked or answered in a simple, hi, how are you? There's a common myth about entrepreneurs that they are super risky, right? We sort of like to make them heroes because the perception is that they just jump off a cliff without looking for it. But what I think is really fascinating is that entrepreneurs aren't necessarily the most risky person. They happen to be the best at mitigating risk. So if you're going to be successful as an entrepreneur, you can really calculate the upside and the downside of each venture or each decision in your day to better map your success down the road. And so risk-taking is an art, but it's really almost finding that balance of taking the risk and preventing the risk that makes successful entrepreneurs really fly. When it comes to teaching myself or feeding myself information that helps me be a better founder, that helps me be a better investor, that helps me be a better guide to entrepreneurs, I really look at our industry. And I think there are a couple key places I look. I like to look in Nebraska at stories that are being written about our companies here. So whether those are stories that you find from the Chamber of Commerce, whether those are stories that you find in the local newspaper, or whether those are stories that are being pushed out via even the Startup Collaborative's blog, I think that's a fascinating way to keep my finger on the pulse of what's happening with entrepreneurs in our market. But then when I sort of expand that circle, I look at some of the major venture funds to make me a better founder, right? So there's a venture fund called First Round Capital that has got an incredible site that offers tons of tips and tools to help me manage a team better, forecast a fundraise better, grow and scale my company better, sell better, all those sorts of things. I would say A16Z, which is both a podcast and a news site, is also really good at that too. And then watching things like VentureBeat or industry publications like the National Venture Association and what they're putting out helps me understand how does what's happening here in Nebraska fit into context of the larger global trends on starting up and venture capital. Starting up seems harder than it actually is. And I would say to you, if you're thinking about some problem that you believe could be done better or solved, is to take it into small chunks. Start with the first foot ahead of you and don't try to solve the entire thing right away. And so when I say that, it can be as simple as identifying really clearly the problem you're trying to solve and talking to 20 people you think have that same problem as you. And those 20 conversations will yield so much insight as to what the market is saying and whispering or screaming about what they need. And then the steps look a lot like that, right? So now form your hypothesis on what the solution should be and go back to the market and talk to them. Did it prove to be true or not true? And be very comfortable in that process of discovering and listening to the market, because that's where you are going to not just build the first business, but you will build 4 or 5 businesses out of that.